Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Cinema. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
And we're finally done with our month of 3-hour period pieces. So we made it through November. A lot of fun going through Amadeus, Barry Lyndon, and Terrence Malick's The New World. But, you know, it's nice to be in a new month and be able to kind of branch out, watch different kinds of movies. So for this month, we decided that I think we're just going to be doing 3 movies, most likely, instead of the usual 4. And so each one of us is just going to pick something, anything we want that we want to make the others watch, whether it's something we've seen and we know they haven't, or something that we have wanted to watch for a really long time, or maybe we just newly discovered it and we want to share it with the group. So my pick came up first. And for this episode, we are going to be talking about Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder. Adam, would you like to tell the people what it's about?
Indeed. Dial M for Murder from 1954. A former tennis star arranges the murder of his adulterous wife.
That makes her sound a little more villainous than she really is depicted in this movie.
Yeah. To our knowledge in the movie, she's wanting
it's been for like a year.
Oh, I thought she was like, we haven't been caught. We've been very like secretive. We're not like, he's not really sure, but he suspects once once Halliday comes over.
Oh yeah.
I thought that's when he was like, wait a second, but
no, he knows. But yeah, so this was my pick. This was I watched this for the first time a couple of years ago and just absolutely loved it and wanted to finally sort of make you guys watch it too. So before we get into opening statements, we always start off with At a Glance. Alfred Hitchcock, 1954, $1.4 million budget, and it made $6 million and was the 14th highest grossing movie of 1954.
Wow.
Nice. He had quite the year because he also released Rear Window in 1954, which is insane. That's in the same year.
Yeah.
And a really great little 2-year run with 3 movies with Grace Kelly, with Dial M for Murder, Rear Window, and then To Catch a Thief with Cary Grant in 1955. So just a great little stretch there. And in my opinion, Grace Kelly, the best of the Hitchcock blondes, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a power duo right there. Him and Grace Kelly.
Yeah, I love it. So accolades, 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, an 8.2 on IMDb, and a 4.1 on Letterboxd. It's number 159 on the IMDb Top 250.
That feels low.
Does feel a little low.
It's a little low for me.
It's interesting because this movie is like amongst just kind of, so it's a little higher on IMDb than it is elsewhere, and amongst just kind of like fans and like the people, for lack of a better phrase. It seems to be a more highly regarded Hitchcock movie than it is amongst critics. Not that critics dislike it, but if you look up like critic lists, this often shows up in like somewhere between like 8 and like 16 out of Hitchcock's like 20 some like American movies.
Okay.
So kind of critics view this as more of like a mid-tier Hitchcock, where I'm with the people on this one, as I try to be.
Yep.
159 on the top 250, and as I always sort of enjoy, it is between Howl's Moving Castle and Gone with the Wind.
Oh, I liked this more than Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
Nope.
I think by
not even close. And then it was number 48 on AFI's Top 100 Thrillers. That list came out in 2001.
Okay.
And then it was number 9 on AFI's Top 10 Mystery Movies, and that list came out in 2008.
I hate the qualifier of being like a mystery or a thriller, but I think there's a very respectable spots for that to be. For this to be in those lists.
I think so too. And then really quick reminder to like and subscribe if you want to keep getting updates on what we do here. Typically 1 movie a week. I think they should. Yeah. We just did a bunch of old period pieces. We did the work there for you if you're kind of curious about those 3-hour movies, or even if you've seen them before, kind of what they're designed in mind for people who have seen them before. But for the most part, if you're not too worried about spoilers, you can enjoy them as well. And then, we'll keep doing about a movie a week, pretty much the plan. So if you want to, keep getting updates and help us grow the channel, go ahead and subscribe.
And should we go
So
ahead and let them know which movie we'll be doing next? Since
We should. You're one step ahead of me there, Dylan. I got that
Yeah.
coming up next. So Adam's pick for December is
Woohoo!
very on brand and a seasonal pick as well. Dylan and I have never seen this.
Nope.
So next week we will be talking about Gremlins from 1984.
Let's go.
This one should be fun. I'm excited because this has always been one of those ones where I'm kind of like, I feel like I should watch this, but I just never do.
Yeah.
So you're kind of giving me that push that I need.
Yeah. Well, and we just did all these period pieces, all these very serious, very like artistic, amazing movies. And Gremlins is just going to toss us right back into the 80s and be like, you know what? It's just weird. It's just fun. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, we need some of that.
Little breath of fresh air. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be fun. All right, on to opening statements. And I'd like to hear from you guys before I go, since I've seen this before. I know how I feel. You guys know how I feel about it. So I'm curious what you guys think.
Well, I can go first. My opening statement is that Dial M for Murder is a delightful and well-crafted thriller that thrives off its simplicity. It shows the plot, it shows the murder, it shows how they catch them. That sounds simple, but very few films do it as well as this, and I loved it.
Oh,
all right. There we go.
I know you'd like that, Nate.
Yeah, loved it.
I have just an adaptation of a play perfectly written and directed for the big screen. It's so you're in one room the entire movie, and they get so much tension and stuff out of you being able to see everything, as Dylan said. So
yeah, for me then my opening statement is that this was my gateway drug into movies of the 40s and 50s.
That's right.
I kind of grew up, and outside of basically The Wizard of Oz, I just had trouble getting into older movies with sometimes the pacing, often like the acting style. There's just something that feels like not as exciting.
Yeah.
Or at least did until a couple of years ago when there was kind of an idea that we had at one point about diving in and doing like best of lists from each decade. And so I was diving into the older ones, and I started with this.
Oh, wow.
And it just absolutely blew my mind. This is easily in my top 100 movies of all time. I should have, I usually do this when it's in my top 100. So let me find where it is, because
I know where it is.
I want to know.
like to sneak that into accolades.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, this is my number 64 movie of all time.
Nice.
Between Burning, the Korean movie by Lee Chang-dong from 2018, and Brooklyn, the period piece romance coming of age movie starring Saoirse Ronan from 2015. So yeah, I love this movie to death, and it just instantly kind of redefined what an older, like a classic movie could be. And I've watched a ton of 40s and 50s movies now that I love. And this one, I think, kind of for the rest of my life now, will always be viewed as kind of that one that like really got me into older movies.
For sure.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And I can totally see why. It's just so well thought out.
Yeah.
I just feel like a lot of the problem with a lot of older movies is sometimes just the pacing or whatnot. Maybe like you can see what's coming a mile away, or it's just you feel like you're kind of smarter than the movie is. But with this movie, it felt like it was always just a half a step ahead of you. You know, it felt like it wasn't too far ahead. Like it wasn't laying like clues as to how it was all going to end at the beginning. Like it wasn't trying to be too smart. It was just a little bit ahead of you. It was like, oh, what's going to happen next? Oh, I don't know. Like it almost felt like the movie didn't know if like the guy was going to figure it out, you know, like,
yeah, like it kind of, and it's interesting too, because they sort of tell you what the plan is at the beginning of the movie, which is different from most movies like this. And then to your point, instead, like the question and the mystery becomes kind of like, okay, the movie just told us it's going to go this way. And then it's sort of like, is it, or what direction are we really going to go?
Yeah.
Because it very rarely goes the direction that the characters think it's going to go, which makes it kind of different, I think. And it makes it feel really modern.
For sure. It's so modern. It's much more in line with like a Knives Out or like Glass Onion than it is with like your traditional like murder mystery type of movie. It's so much smarter than it treats its characters not as dumb, because they're smart, but you're not 2 steps ahead. You're not ahead of the characters. You're basically right in line, even though the movie's like, this is exactly what we're doing. It's exactly what we're doing. But the movie knows that like 2 steps ahead, the twist or this is coming, and that'll change what we're showing you. You know, it's very much knows what it's doing. It's playing with you the entire time.
Yeah, and it becomes more about like how, like, is he going to get away with it or is he going to get caught? Because we watched everything happen. We know what happened.
Yeah,
which is just a weird premise for a mystery or a thriller or whatever you want to define this movie as. But like, we saw it. Now, is he going to get away with it, or what's going to trip him up? What little clue did he maybe leave? Where did he make a mistake?
Yeah, interesting to put us in the murderer's shoes right from the beginning. And then kind of, you know, that breeds kind of a almost implicit kind of sympathy with his side, even though you don't want him to get away with murder. You're also kind of just, you know, because you've seen what he's done in a way, you kind of are like, ooh, but is he though? It's like, that's the intrigue. Like, did it work? Will it work?
Yeah, so I think that's a great segue into our defining moments. So, Dylan, what do you got?
All right, so I have 3. I have one, the murder itself. All the hype and build up. When we finally get there, I was on the edge of my seat. I can only imagine
a different murder than we were expecting.
Well, yes, but when it finally gets to the point and he's walking and he makes the phone call and the guys and everything is all set up and the tension is, you know, Alfred Hitchcock is just in his zone, and I was on the edge of my seat for that. And then the way it twisted and didn't turn out, I mean, I was literally like, oh my god, like, oh, like, and then I was just like, oh dude, you are effed. Like, I said that like loud. I was like, oh my god. And then just like, that was actually I watched this in 2 different separate sittings, and that was actually right where I cut off because I had to go to bed, so I finished it the next day. So I after the murder and he's walking back to the table to tell the guy like, oh, I gotta go, that where I was like, oh my god, I gotta stop right here, or else I'm gonna watch this whole movie.
Oh, so you stopped even like before the intermission?
Before the intermission. Wow. I didn't know the intermission was coming. Yeah.
But, I mean, you don't expect that for a movie that's under 2 hours, but then you kind of remind yourself that like, well, this was a stage play, so that's probably right where the intermission was.
Yep. And I love the way it was shot, the iconic kind of image from the poster of the hand reaching out. Great. I mean, like, wow, great shot from Alfred Hitchcock there. Second was the interrogation of her when she has been like accused, and they bring her in, and it's kind of like almost like a surreal, like the background is like changing colors, and it's like these disembodied voices shouting at her like, but why'd you do this, and why was this found, and but she's just like, I just thought that was really like the way that was done will stick with me. And then the finale, just everything with the breakdown. I mean, the masterful, you know, in any kind of movie like this, if you can nail that final kind of explanation scene and like boom, and that's why it happened, like, that's great. And this totally nails it with the key device. So yeah,
love it.
Those three defining moments for sure.
Yeah.
Adam, did you have any others besides those?
The only thing I had, or I had 2 separate ones, but it was the planning of the murder with the other accomplice.
Yeah, that was a long scene.
Yeah.
Adam and I watched this together. I paused it when it started because obviously I had seen this before, and I was like, I want to know exactly how long this scene is because I knew it was coming up. It's 22 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like all one take. It feels like it. I don't know if it actually is.
I mean, it's mostly like him like talking and you know,
just going back and forth and asking questions like, well, what about this? Like, well, you're going to do this because of that, because I set this up at this time and I'll do this it's that whole planning. It's almost like a heist movie that just like, it just goes completely off the rails. I'm planning all these specific things to happen in this specific order, and then obviously in a heist movie something goes wrong. How do you stay on your toes? How do you deal with it? All of that was super cool. And then the other thing I had was any time where Tony or Wendis, our main character, is like thinking on his feet, and you can see the gears turning, and he's got to be like, oh, well, it's because of this, and he just like launches into it, and he just makes up a new lie and just runs with it full tilt. So I thought those were cool.
Yeah, that was actually one I forgot was the quick pivot when he gets back right before the intermission. The pivot scene when he realizes, okay, like, how can I maneuver this so that I can actually still come out on top? Because like you said, Adam, you can clearly see like the gears turning in his eyes and like everything, and it's just like this like villainous like master villain at work like vibe that just nailed it. That was so much fun, just seeing him like bop around the apartment. Like he's
Yeah.
burning that thing. I'm like, oh, you better get rid of those like remains, the charcoal bits, like,
and like trying to hide stuff like casually as he's like walking around, like grabs something off the mantle and just like slowly like throws it into a pocket, but like it looks so casual and just so like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this, I'm just cleaning the apartment or something like that.
Yeah, and the way like kind of the next day when the police come back, that he's able to sort of guide them in the direction that he wants while appearing to be standing up for his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's just from like that character's perspective, just like it's really fun to watch him do that, while at the same time, obviously, you don't want Grace Kelly to get in trouble,
right?
Like,
no,
she didn't do anything. She's the victim here.
and
but it's just so fascinating to watch him. And then like one thing I wanted to add to the whole murder scene, the first time I saw it, and she stabs him in the back with the scissors, and then he has that kind of moment, and the first time I was just like, is he seriously just going to die in like half a second from being stabbed in the back with scissors? And then it's not that, but it kind of makes you think that, because that's something that I feel like you see in old movies as well.
For sure.
People just die like really quickly and really easily. And then I was just like, he got stabbed like that far in the back, like an inch deep with a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
Like obviously it's going to wound him and help her get away. But then the way that he falls on them, and they just kind of like,
they like open up and just slide
go up
straight
into it.
Yeah.
Like that's such a great shot. But yeah, you guys covered all the defining moments that I had, which was the 22-minute scene where Tony blackmails Swan and just kind of explains to the audience basically like his vision of what the rest of this movie is going to be.
Yeah.
And then the break-in / murder attempt. I love the shot in the hallway of Swan coming in through the front door to the building. And then like it's dark, he's got the trench coat on and he's looking for the key under, like there's just an image there that I think is really good. And then just the whole reveal at the end, which I thought was just so much fun. And like the inspector
John Williams is the inspector,
adds just a bit of like kind of fun to it,
flair for sure.
That you didn't really realize you wanted.
Like I thought this would be pretty straightforward, like even the scene when oh, go ahead.
When he comes in, he starts cracking these kind of witty little jokes. At first, it does feel kind of tonally off, but then by the end, you're like, oh, wait, no, like that's just, it adds to the charm and the like delightfulness of this murder movie.
Yeah.
Especially once you realize that like the inspector knows more than like the audience does. So like he's like, oh, okay, your side of the story is this, or like, okay. Well, what about that thing that like nobody else knows happened, but you probably do? And like he's like, we put it together.
Oh, yeah.
We've got it. We've got all the information. You're just digging yourself a hole. Like all that is just a little more like, oh, look at him go. Look at him cook. Like
there is an interesting little kind of turn there where we're ahead of everybody the whole way. And he comes in and we think we're still ahead of him. And to some degree we are.
Yeah.
Because we still know what happened.
Yeah.
But he's ahead of us now in how they're going to catch him.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting dynamic where like between him and the audience, we know everything.
Yeah.
But we just need him to be able to figure out kind of that last little detail. And we don't know what it's going to be, which is what makes it also thrilling.
Yeah.
So then questions. I just have one, and it's, where did Tony go wrong? Where did he slip up? Because there's that conversation earlier that he has with his wife's lover, as they like to use in older movies.
Yeah, they do love that.
Where he's a mystery novel writer, and they talk about like, can you plan a great murder or whatever? And he says like, I think I could plan it, but the execution, like somebody always misses something.
Oops, that was the line. Yeah. I felt like it was like Tony versus fate for a while. I kind of felt like
a little bit.
It was just like like he's not, but yeah.
Yeah, so Adam and I watched this together, and after we finished it, we were kind of trying to like backtrack, like where can you mark it? Like, because there are a series of mistakes.
Yeah.
Once things start to go wrong, but like where can you kind of do you think there's like one moment where if that had gone correctly, then it all just would have gone according to plan? And I think there is, but I'm curious to see if you guys think there's one.
I think it's got to be like the call, like that initial like jumping off point where like the guy is going to be in the apartment already. I'll make a call. She'll go get the phone, and then then he'll kill her. I think it all goes wrong when the timing is off, because it makes the killer or the guy who gets killed rather. I forget his name at the moment.
Swan.
Swan. Thank you. It makes Swan second guess the entire operation. So he's like out the door by the time, jumpy and out the door by the time the phone rings. And then he has to make a split-second decision, which it's not according to plan. It's not part of the plan. He's got to think on his feet, which now ruins everything else, because stuff can still go according to plan, sort of, but the timing is just a little bit off. And the watch being the biggest issue, Wendis's watch being off.
That's where I was.
That's him. Too. Yeah, I think it's just him not winding his watch and making sure that his watch worked.
Yep, that was what I had, because if he calls on time, everything's set. Yeah, it gets messed up when he's 4 minutes late, and Swan is just like, he didn't call at 11:03. Should I leave? And then he starts to leave. That's also when he leaves the key, because he starts to put the key back, but the door is still open.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then it's all just down to the watch, which is so fascinating, because it's really just kind of like there's a large element of just, it's weird to describe it this way, but like bad luck.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were so focused on on this whole operation going well, you forgot kind of the other aspects of your life that have to go correctly for that to succeed, like winding your watch and just calling somebody at the right time.
Like knowing what time it is.
Yeah, Dylan, you were gonna say something.
Well, and I even loved during the murder attempt when he's going to try to put it around her neck, but she's on the phone, so he can't get it. So he's waiting for her to put it down. And he keeps getting like faked out. Like,
the cord is here. And he's like,
detail, but it adds to the tension so much.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's really good. It's those little like he says, like, oh yeah, I would have missed one thing, or I'd missed some small piece that would have like ruined me, and it's like that's what it was. Just didn't wind your watch.
Also, at the end, I liked his big slip up with when he tells kind of the big fib story about his wife, and the interaction that they had. When then they're like, oh well, she's still alive, and then he's like, oh yeah, if they like ask her about this, she's gonna say I'm lying. Like it was like a slip up where he almost was acting as if she was already dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, we can still talk to her, right? And he was like, oh shit, yeah, wait.
Like, no, I didn't mean what I
like, I'm going to the bank now.
Yeah, I haven't been just secretly waiting for this day for a really long time. That was all I had for questions. How about you guys?
I honestly couldn't think of any questions.
Okay.
I probably should have thought right after I saw it, because it has been a few days, but I just feel like the movie, the pacing is so good that it moves at the speed that your mind moves with like how you're trying to figure out things. It feels like every little like, oh, he's got the key and he has to get it in the purse. So it'll be like his eyes looking at the purse and then like the key and be like, I have to get that in there. And then like he does it and then it shows you his hand. And then it says every little bit is shown just enough where I feel like you can follow it. And it's kind of, I don't know. So I felt like when it was over, I didn't have a lot of questions, at least.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
I had some simple ones, some dumb ones, but my first one was just who and why would you try to murder Grace Kelly?
Yeah.
I memean, like, come on, like, just let her
come on,
be.
guy.
She's too good. And then, like, why does it matter that he's a tennis star? Because, like, that's it's brought up like once or twice. It's not really a huge point, but like, is it just like a kitschy thing to be like, he was a former this, he's lost his glory, or whatever?
Yeah,
like,
maybe it's not the only movie by Hitchcock where the male lead is a famous tennis player.
Okay, so maybe just
Strangers on a Train as well. I just wonder if I don't know. It just
something Hitchcock likes.
Yeah.
Going back to your question though, Nate, another big slip up might have was the handling of the money, the way that how he used it.
Yeah, he got pretty cocky.
And he really, I mean, he should have just starved, had, soup and bread for 3. I mean, do what you got to do, bro.
Yeah.
Like, because that was, I think the inspector mentioned that put up some red flags.
I think that was what started it.
Yeah. So,
my last question was just, who's your favorite character and why?
Oh, I got to say the husband for me.
Yeah. Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. As much as I love Grace Kelly and just love watching her in Hitchcock movies.
Yeah.
Tony's this is Tony's movie.
Yeah. I like the inspector, I think, the most because
He'd
of
be a
his
second
like
for me.
brevity and
He's
his
a
flair.
great like bit character for sure.
So like I think that's really fun. He's a really great addition. But
I guess I'd also ask, I know I've seen more of them than you guys have, but like how many other Hitchcock movies have you guys seen, and like where would this rank for the ones you have? I mean, Adam, is this your first Hitchcock
this
movie?
is my first because I've seen like The Birds and a couple other
Okay.
ones. I probably couldn't name them right now, but this is definitely the top.
I've seen Birds and Vertigo, right? And
Oh, yeah.
North by Northwest. I mean, this is definitely upper tier, if not towards the top. I haven't seen North by Northwest since I was a teenager, so I want to give that one another watch to kind of compare. And I'm a big Cary Grant guy, but
Yeah.
I mean, this is definitely. I frankly I felt like when this was over that this would have the notoriety that Vertigo has. It feels like they should almost be switched, at least in my mind. Like Vertigo was really, really good, but when this ended, I was like, this was incredible. Whereas when Vertigo ended, me and you were both kind of like, it was good, but was it like?
It took me a while, but I really love Vertigo now.
Yeah,
I
same.
think there's just much more like Dial M for Murder, I think is just like a basically like perfectly executed thriller.
It's so much more accessible.
Whereas Vertigo has just like layers and layers of symbolism and subtext, and like Hitchcock making a movie, like kind of turning the camera almost back on himself and like the way that he treats women. And like, there's just way more to like chew on and talk about with Vertigo, where I think Dial M for Murder is just like, I think fun, like beginning to end, and you know exactly what you're getting. And I think it's, like I said, like a very accessible and very well executed thriller. And it just is what it is. So I think from like film school perspectives and like how to make movies and stuff and kind of substance, like under the surface, there's a lot more going on with Vertigo. But that all said, this is my second favorite Hitchcock movie after North by Northwest. My third is Notorious.
I have not seen it.
And those three are all in my top 100 movies.
Okay.
And
I'd say,
Strangers on a Train would be number 4, which I would highly recommend. That movie's bonkers.
Okay. This is just so much more straightforward. Again, it's kind of like you can like Ocean's 11, a heist movie. There's nothing like groundbreaking about that movie, but it's fun as shit to watch. And that's how I feel here. Is like this is just something you can throw on this movie to basically anybody, and they're gonna like it.
Yeah, I really like you kind of comparing this movie to a heist movie because it actually like has that element where you're kind of part of the plan. And then the plan doesn't go right, and you kind of got to see how they're going to handle it. I really like that.
Heist movies, mystery movies, one and the same.
Yeah. Anything else? Or we can go to observations and musings, where I have a couple that I like.
Yeah. Hit us.
Okay, yeah.
Dylan, you...
Well, I wanted to get this because I assume that other people might have it, but the M on the phone in the intro.
Yeah.
That intro.
Yeah.
Give me a break with that.
It's so cool. I have a tidbit about that later.
Also, just great title.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Had me from the very beginning. I just wanted to get that one out. I want to be the one to say that one.
Yeah. So I have one that this is the 4th time I think that I've seen Dial M for Murder, and I hadn't noticed this until watching it this time with Adam, and it's like 30 seconds into the movie, basically. And I paused it like right away, and I was like, Adam's like, "What the fuck is happening right now? Like, what are you?"
We're gonna have one of these viewing experiences where one of us is just like, "Oh, but watch this part." Like,
yeah, which was not the case. It was because I noticed something that I'd never noticed before. And in the opening scene, like when they're at breakfast in the morning, and Tony spills the salt, and then puts it in his hand and throws it over his shoulder, because if you spill the salt, you get bad luck. And you throw it over your shoulder, and what does he not want bad luck about? He knows what he has planned that day.
Yeah.
Which is just so darkly funny.
Yeah.
Like, good luck on my murder plan.
Hope my wife dies today. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's incredible. So I noticed that. Like,
that's great.
And obviously, you'll never pick up on that if you don't know where the movie's going.
Yeah.
And then, so that was an observation, and then one musing, which I shared with Adam at the end as well, which is I like to imagine that they live right down the street from Roger and Pongo from 101 Dalmatians. Because there's a shot of the outside, because like in 101 Dalmatians, they look out the window at that kind of opening scene when you're watching people walk to the park. And right to the right at the end of the block is an entrance to the park. And then in Dial M for Murder, when you kind of watch a couple scenes when either like Grace Kelly or Tony
Yeah.
Wendiss is outside when they're watching him at the end. You can see that like right down the street at the end of it is an entrance to the park.
And it's all row houses.
Looks like the way it's laid out is like obviously like the architecture is different and it's an animated movie. But the way it's laid out, like they could literally live like 4 houses down from Roger.
Yeah.
And I like to think that they exist in the same world.
I hope they do. I think that's fun. One that I had was that this movie goes through a lot of lengths to show you the important parts, kind of like what Dylan was talking about earlier, where you're watching Tony see something. He's got to get the key back in the purse without her knowing, and you get to watch like zoomed in on him like finding the key, picking it up very slyly, and then like opening the purse and dropping it in and putting it back. You get a very good close-up of a lot of those types of things that are going to be important to the plot. Or like, oh, we need to make sure the audience knows where this thing is because it will come up later, or like some of those important pieces. It goes to great lengths to show you those things, and they're all important. A lot of movies are just like, oh, in the background over there's that thing that you should have picked up on if you were really paying attention. And this one's like, it's right there, and it's still you're still not going to figure it out, which is so much fun. I think that's where this movie just subverts a lot of those like tropes to a certain extent. Is like it's gonna show you everything, and you're not still gonna get it.
Yeah, I just think it moves at just this amazing pace that it keeps through the entire runtime. It feels like there's no dead weight.
Even with that 22-minute just all dialogue scene at the beginning, where he just kind of lays it out for you. Due to his performance, Ray Milland, it's just also captivating, and you just like can't take your eyes off of him. Yeah.
You feel like Swan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, my only other observation or musing was just that it gets down to the point so quickly, just from the beginning. It's just within 5 minutes, it's just like it's husband explaining, "I'm going to murder my wife," like or just
the two like just sort of very quick zoom shots on Grace Kelly kissing her husband, and then Grace Kelly kissing a different man.
Yeah.
And we're like, ooh, problems.
Yeah.
Who's that man?
Yeah, it's like 2 people.
Look at her go.
Must not go unpunished.
But yeah.
All right. Tidbits. I just have one that I wanted to include.
Okay.
And that is that the actors who play Tony and the
Inspector John Williams,
both reprised their roles from the stage play.
Yep.
Oh,
that's what I have.
So Ray Milland and John Williams were both part of the stage play, and they just hopped right on board and were in the movie as well.
Yep. And John Williams actually won the 1953 Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Play for Dial M for Murder. So to add to that, so the inspector reprised his role for this movie, which I think is fun.
He's also in Witness for the Prosecution. Dylan, you watched that, right?
Yeah.
That he's the I'm not sure.
Okay.
Someone named Brogan Moore. I don't know how big of a role he has. And he's in To Catch a Thief, also with Grace Kelly. Hitchcock's movie the following year with Cary Grant.
Yeah. All right. A couple of mine. I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4. So Warner Brothers actually insisted shooting this movie in 3D, which to me is just bonkers because we just had that craze of 3D movies and 3D TVs and all that technology and stuff coming out, like 10 years ago. And this is 1954 and they were shooting in 3D. And Hitchcock wanted it to be released flat. So just like normal. So when they did that first shot of the finger on the M dialing using the rotary phone, the 3D camera couldn't actually capture it. Or they couldn't do it correctly. So Hitchcock ordered a giant finger to be made from wood and a proportionately large dial to be made to achieve the effect.
See, this is the kind of shit that we don't get anymore.
Just
like CGI it. I don't know.
Or just like use the most expensive camera you can find. But
like back then, they were just like, all right, I guess we're just gonna have to build a giant wooden finger and a huge phone,
and just someone
achieve this effect.
Which is just hilarious.
Great. I want to look that up and watch that.
Yeah. So when Tony is describing to Swan, the middle-aged woman with whom Swan had been affiliated, having died from a drug overdose, it's a very small line. He's supposed to say, like in the play, he says a middle-aged woman found dead due to an overdose of cocaine. But Nate, you'll know this due to the Hays Code.
Yep.
They're not able to detail drug usage on screen. So the studio officials had Hitchcock change it, and cocaine just became the word something. So the woman found dead due to an overdose of something is like, all right, well, whatever. Like, okay. Like now we don't even bat an eye. We're like, oh yeah, cocaine, heroin, whatever you want.
Man, bummer.
Yeah. So that was just fun. During the plan to expose Tony's involvement with this, the inspector has one of his policemen return the wife's handbag to the police station. The policeman puts the bag over his shoulder, if you recall.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yep, and he goes to leave, and the inspector stops him because he could be arrested. Well, the inspector then places the handbag in his briefcase because the laws regarding sexual behavior in Britain were not changed until 1967 to decriminalize homosexuality. So he was doing that because he was afraid he's going to get arrested for being homosexual, which is bananas, obviously, to think about now. But even just wearing your purse like over your shoulders as opposed to just carrying it, like that would get you arrested.
Yeah, interesting decision by Alfred Hitchcock to have that little line in there.
Yeah, because it's like a joke.
Yeah,
I noticed that this time too. I was like, that they probably didn't need to have that in there, but
well, I wonder, and that just seems it
just
also
sign of the
seems
time,
way out of place with like a lot of the rest of the movie. It's
It is funny how like he originally, like the policeman originally like grabs it and puts it over his shoulder and just kind of like walks away like normal. He's like, wait, like come on.
I feel like maybe Hitchcock left it in there as like kind of maybe a condemnation, like as like future.
That's how I
generations
felt.
will look back
That's how
and
I
be
felt.
like, this was so stupid. I mean, I don't know.
Hopefully,
yeah,
we can choose to view it that way.
Yeah, I'll look it up. All right, last
and
one.
Then the last one I have is that at around 13 minutes, Hitchcock can be seen in this movie. He's in all of his movies.
Yep.
He can be seen, but he's in a reunion photograph in this movie. This is the the final movie in which he is not appearing in person in his movies. So he's
okay.
The rest of them from 54 on, he's all physically in the movie, which is just kind of a neat little thing that Hitchcock did. But
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, so couple fun ones.
I think you got that from M. Night Shyamalan.
Hitchcock got it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's time.
All right,
ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh.
For the moment you've all been waiting for.
Bring it out.
It's time for the McCabe coat of excellence.
There it is.
Look at that thing.
Oh,
real beauty.
God. Love
if this is your first time joining us for one of these deep dives, we are very big fans of McCabe and Mrs. Miller here at Exploring Cinema, particularly of McCabe's coat.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of each episode, we each need to give out a coat to anybody involved in the movie who we think exhibited excellence, kind of like a green jacket at the Masters. We do not have to give a coat out if we don't want to. I will absolutely be giving a coat out for this movie, and maybe not to the first person you'd expect, but I'm giving this coat to Ray Milland.
Okay.
Nice.
I think that without his performance, there are points where this could drag or feel ridiculous. But he's just so captivating. And like you said earlier, Dylan, like we're following the murderer, we're following the villain the entire way through. And he's got to have that sort of like he's clearly smart enough to pull this off despite what happens. And he's just got to have like a little bit of charm to him to keep us hanging on and coming back for more.
Yeah,
Ray Milland, and there are plenty of opportunities that I'll have at some point, I think, to give Hitchcock a coat of a McCabe coat. So giving it to Ray Milland.
Well, I love that pick, and I'm gonna split it right down the middle. I'm gonna cut that coat right in half. I'm giving half to Ray Milland, so he has a coat and a half, what everybody wants, and then I'm giving the other half to Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah,
just for the whole vision, for just every little intricate detail, the pacing, the music. I mean, just every
the camera work.
The camera work. I mean, and getting so much done where almost all of it takes place just in that little apartment, mostly all in this living room. Just incredible work. And then also Ray Milland for all the reasons you mentioned, just perfectly cast as murderous main character husband.
I'm also going to go with Ray Milland with
Damn.
a small additional tidbit that Hitchcock wanted Cary Grant for this role, but he turned it down because he didn't want to be a villain. So
Interesting.
Okay.
Kind of fun there. So I think Ray Milland being the correct choice absolutely killed it.
That makes To Catch a Thief a really fascinating Cary Grant role, because To Catch a Thief is about, he plays a character who like is a retired jewel thief, and then somebody is mimicking his style once he's like kind of gone legit. So then he has to try to prove that it's not him doing it. So he has to try to catch the thief. So like in that movie, he like was a villain, but now isn't.
Yeah, righteous guy.
Yeah. So that's an interesting, because that came out like literally the next year. So that's a really interesting character, knowing that he didn't want to do this.
Yeah. So yeah, Ray Milland, for all the reasons that you mentioned, this movie doesn't work without him being so believably like sharp. Yeah. Despite things just not going his way.
Yeah, he's kind of got that like borderline like super like British supervillain.
Yeah.
To him.
Yeah.
There was one shot in particular where a policeman is asking a question of Grace Kelly, and Milland is behind the policeman and he's moving from right to left or whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, looking at her like, you're gonna lie for me, right? And like that was like
just slowly just behind. Yeah.
Wow.
So good.
For sure.
There's so many good moments in this movie, and it's what, sub 2 hours. It's I have
an hour
it here.
40.
Yeah, hour 45 according to IMDb. With that intermission, it's so succinct, it's so tight. There's so much going on that's just so fun. It's hard not to like this movie. I mean, I know we don't do stars, but I think we all have this. We would all have this very, very high.
Oh yeah, it's a terrific film.
Definitely. All right, on to closing statements. I mean, for me, I don't really have anything specific here other than to just kind of go back to what I already said. With this is my second favorite Hitchcock movie and was my gateway into the movies of the 40s and 50s. I saw this before I saw North by Northwest, or a bunch of other old Hitchcock movies as well. And just highly recommended if you are looking to maybe kind of dip your toe into classic Hollywood.
Yeah.
I just think this is
great,
very accessible and a great place to start.
Shockingly modern. That'd be mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mine is an absolutely gripping domestic murder tale that feels like it's always just a half step ahead of the audience. Perfect pace and dramatic performances. Truly a masterpiece thriller.
Awesome. I love this so much.
There it is. What a finish.
So happy.
What a finish.
Whose turn is it to put a wrap on the show?
It would be mine.
All right, and before that, just a reminder, next episode will be Adam's pick. Yes, going back to the mid-'80s. We just can't get enough.
Yeah, it's our real hot spot.
Lot of gold to mine out of there.
Yep. Gremlins, 1984, put us in the holiday spirit, or so I hear.
I know.
So very excited for that. And yeah, it's my turn to put a wrap on the show.
Take it away.
Do you really believe in the perfect murder?